Order at 7 p.m. Rebecca Schatza will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, Kyle Larson will offer an invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our eternal Heavenly Father, we are thankful for this opportunity to serve in Riverton. Thankful for the ability to live in this town of Riverton. Thankful for remembering those brave souls on 9/11. Thankful for the opportunity to serve. Father, we would ask that Thou would bless us with insight and understanding that we might serve properly. And we say this humbly. Name Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Would the Deputy City Clerk please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilman Lance Godey.
Here.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Sean Peterson.
Here.
Councilwoman Rebecca Schatza.
Here.
Mayor John Baker.
I am present. The Chair would entertain a motion to excuse Mike Bailey from tonight's meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I declare that we do have a quorum. The Chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Anything we need to add to that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion passes. The first item on the agenda is a Google Map presentation. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Give me one moment to get this going again. Did it explode? You gotta be kidding. Might be a problem.
That was working just a minute ago, guys.
20 seconds ago. Your Honor, if you give me 1 second, I apologize.
Okay, we'll wait. And there it is, the same ghost.
We'll go down together, all right?
Yes. I did this. We're getting it.
Yeah. You got
I mean, we had it.
I saw it.
Have you restarted the computer?
Wish I would have restarted the computer.
Twice. Unplug it, plug it back in,
Yeah, but we're not,
control,
Not,
delete.
we don't have any other lights up here.
You know. Let's see.
All of us IT guys trying to help out.
Yeah, we'll let Tim work on it. Tony, you talk for a minute about it, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the things that we had talked about previously was putting something together that we could use both on this site, any future sites that we have, that we could share throughout the community that allowed people throughout the community to have a resource to say, okay, I want to find hotels, I want to find food, I want to find places of worship, I want to find places where I can get gas, something that we could refer to consistently and update on an ongoing basis. One of the things that that I had used in the past that I thought might fit this bill was a customized Google map, and I had used that before, but that discussion kind of took root a little bit, and we started looking at what that was going to look like. So I talked with Megan, and Megan actually grabbed this project and just did an outstanding job with it. So if we can get this going in about 2 seconds, what we're going to see is an integrated Google map that is specific to Riverton, that we put together, that says here are the different places, and you can select a category such as a hotel, and it'll bring up all the hotels. You can then click on those hotels, whichever ones you want, either in the list or on the map. Once you click on that, you will actually be taken to, there'll be a piece that comes up on the side that allows you to look at their contact information, pictures, and even with a button that allows you to engage Google Maps to give you directions to that location. That engagement actually allows you to go to any particular location on that map from your smartphone. You can get the directions from your computer and the like. We were hoping that this is going to be one of those items that not only the city can have and develop, but also that we can spread throughout the community and use as part of our marketing and as part of a way to show people the attractions that Riverton does have. So that's the reason it was developed. I'm really hoping it gets up there again really soon, because what you're going to see is we hear a lot that people say there's not a lot to do in Riverton. That map suggests a little bit different, because if you look especially through the corridors and the like, it has icons all the way through it. So if it's a pizza place, you're going to see a little pizza. If it's a school, you're going to see a different icon. Megan did a great job on not just putting little drop dots or drop pins, but actually saying, okay, this is this or this is this. It helps you visually guide yourself through, and it's easily accessible. So I'm really sorry that it's not, because I'm really looking forward to talking about it with it actually in front of us so we can see what it's done. I believe council has seen a copy, has been sent a copy of it at one point in the recent future. The nice thing, if you're looking at that link right now, is that link is the same link you were sent before. You can go back to the old one, and it automatically updates anytime Megan updates it.
So does this link appear on the Riverton wy.gov homepage?
That is where we're going to embed it, yes.
Oh, but it's not there now.
It is not there right now.
That's why I couldn't find it.
That is why you couldn't know. It'd be in your email as part of the packet that was probably sent right after the packet was sent out. So if we end up getting this so it works, we'll be able to go through it at that time, maybe at the end of our meeting tonight, hopefully.
Okay. Is there do we need the computer to talk about the proposed ordinance?
No, we do not, Your Honor.
Well, why don't we go ahead and do that, and then maybe this will wake up and we can take a look at it.
Zooming, but
Okay?
No, it's resuming. We're getting to it. It takes just a second,
Okay.
but we can move.
We'll wait just a minute, maybe, if it comes back. So maybe it's the other night, it was her laptop that wouldn't work, right?
You restarted it, didn't you, Tim?
we repeatedly without saving.
So is this,
Go ahead.
Tony, is this going to be on the city Riverton map? Is this under recent news or coming events? Where's the link? What would it be?
We're going to try to work to put that as, when I have done it before, you are able to embed what amounts to a small picture of that map that exists as a link. That is our plan right now.
You can just click on that map.
So, yeah, you're going to see exactly what, here's the map. I'm going to click on it, and then it'll bring up the full one. That's the intent right now. That way people have, anybody looking at it has the ability to say, okay, this is kind of where I want to go. This is useful. We want to make sure that the form, I have never done it where it was maintained and developed by an organization and then sent out. So that is something that we want to make sure that when we want to make sure that the account that it is being sent from and developed from actually can be sent out, and it's not risking anybody, because I know Megan did some of this work on her own. So we have a couple questions. As far as the city website, that's not going to be an issue. That shouldn't be an issue. And worst case scenario, other organizations could link to it. Additionally, we generated a QR code that will allow individuals to scan, so we can start using that on some of our documents and the like. So if you have a QR scanner on your, there we go.
There it is.
If you have a QR scanner on your phone or any other device, that you'll be able to access our website almost.
Okay.
Okay, can we see my hand right here? So when you open up the document, it looks about like this. It's going to have all of the it's going to be.
Pull that mic down to you.
Sorry.
Tony.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize.
Thank you.
When we open the document, it's going to look like this. So anytime you see it, everything is going to be populated. The area over here will allow the user at any time to remove the activation of any of these different areas. So in this case, we've gone down through entertainment, transportation. So any of these can be used. We can do them in any order. So in this case, if someone comes in or somebody wants to know, okay, we want to do lodging, and I want to know where the restaurants are also. So in this case, we can come down here and we can say, we can see any of these. These different items will also allow you to pull up. This is the old Wyoming Motel. So here's China Panda. Here's Thai Chef. It's off the main thoroughfares, but it is still listed on here. In this case, you can go through images, and this button will allow you to navigate to that actual location. It's already pinned through Google, so we didn't have to reinvent that particular wheel. Additionally, if we want to view in Google Maps, one of the things that is sometimes useful is when we use Google Maps, so there's Thai Chef, and I really want to know, I'm lost. So I want to know what the neighborhood looks like. There it is. So that can sometimes be a tool for individuals who use it. That being said, this can be used in almost all platforms, because all platforms use Google, which is why we kind of selected that particular one. Right now, the items that we have listed, we have lodging, parks and recreation, restaurants, education, emergency services, government, gas stations and vehicle repair shops, entertainment, grocery and pharmacy, and transportation. We can extend those. We don't have houses of worship on there right now. That one was half left off intentionally so we could talk about it. That's one of those items that say, okay, that's a very common need for travelers at times. We can add those on there if we want to. The only complexity that eventually comes with this conversation is what are the categories that we're allowing to be on there? Do we put every business on there, and how do you categorize them? That can kind of become a challenge logistically. Otherwise, though, I've found this particular tool to be very useful, both for travelers and people within a community. More often than not, when I've used it and spoken with individuals who do use it, the people that are in the community tend to use it a little bit more. A lot of the time, what I hear is, where do you want to eat dinner? Okay, and they pull it, and I know a number of people that pull up the particular map in that community and say, okay, here. You can get all the way, I did it again. Anyway, we can put multiple categories on there, so this can develop and it can grow. It can shrink, it can change. That's one of the nice parts about it.
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Recruiting, this would be an excellent tool for bringing people, school teachers, professional people to this area quickly. I mean, with these type of links, this service to provide. everybody has a web page, I understand that, but the important thing is, like it showed the neighborhood. I'm positive you could find your house in that neighborhood and look at it and see what it really is like. That, to me, seems like a great advantage to us when people say there's nothing to do in Riverton.
I would agree with you, and I think this is one of those things that we can continue to show more and more of what there is. It's going to take a little bit of time to develop completely, but what we have right now is terribly useful for travelers.
What's your plan on linking it to, how soon will it be on the city webpage?
Within the week.
Okay.
In the next 7 days, barring any significant technical problems, which I hope tonight is not indicative.
If we're not going to connect it to a projector and on the map, as long as it stays on the computer, it should be okay.
That's what we're hoping.
Go ahead, Lance.
Your Honor, Tony, what would be the process for additional businesses to be identified on here that aren't on here, for example?
I think it's more a matter of categorizing those so we can, one of the nice things about the way it's set up right now is that we can say places to eat, groceries and pharmaceuticals and the like. Those types of things are very, very easily defined. And it's geared a little bit towards travel, which is when this was originally developed, when I had first seen it a couple of years ago, that's how it was being marketed, is more towards tourism, but it could be used for different things. Getting the right categories, making sure that, okay, so we want to put clothing stores. Okay, that's fine. So no, all clothing stores are here. And trying to find, and eventually you get down to that miscellaneous. We have a comic book store. So that comic book store might not fit in a whole lot of different areas, but it's some places that people would likely go. So trying to find those particular categories is the only challenge. Actually linking a business or pointing it out and putting an icon is relatively easy.
What would be the process, though? Like, would they contact
Oh,
Megan? Would they contact city
you would
administrator?
contact myself or Megan, yes.
Yeah. So I would think it would be important to, in addition to having the link, some sort of legend or instructional thing that gives people an opportunity to link their business to the map for purposes. And then our challenge is how to categorize it so that it's searchable. But I just kind of want to make sure that we will probably have other businesses besides these that would like to be present on the map.
And we would like those businesses to contact us and try to get them on there. We don't want to keep anybody off of it.
Right.
We just want to try to showcase our community as much as we possibly can. We know there's things that aren't on there yet, but everything you see on there came from about 3 conversations with Megan. She did an outstanding job, especially with the icons. Really like those. That's a nice step up for this. So. One of the other things just on the public relations side of that is that we would hope that through our time on Let's Talk Fremont, anytime we have to speak with the media, that we can say, hey, this is something we're doing, this is a resource, hey, everybody, we can put it on our Facebook page, hey, take a look at this, that'll be useful. One of the things that's notable about this is Megan's also been working with our social media platform using Facebook, and I think we went from, in May 1st, we had 650 followers to now a little over 900 in a very short period of time. That's a way for us to get information out, and those kind of numbers are pretty solid for a short period of time. So this is just another way we can use that to get this out.
And one
Your Honor?
quick.
Go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead.
Hey, I was just wondering if we reached out to Jim Davis. I know that when I was part of the chamber, he had I don't know, it was like a map that came in that had all of those on there, and he would sell advertisement to help fund some of the programs that the chamber does and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe if we had talked to Jim and see if he was going to do that again, and maybe try to tag team with that and say, you know, for this amount you can get an ad on this and also on that, which helps give money to fund the different organizations like they do, the trick or treat they do during Halloween and stuff like that. So I don't know if anybody's thought about that, but it may be an opportunity to get more businesses involved, not only with the chamber, but with this great tool that we're putting together.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
We would be happy to reach out to him. We have not at this point, but anything we can do to help their efforts and for them to help ours, that would be great.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lance?
Just a quick follow-up. The ownership of being able to make changes to the map would reside with us? Like there isn't a way for, it's not like Wikipedia where people can go in and add their own content and change their content. We own that content?
Yeah, that was developed here. So as long as we don't make Megan unhappy right now, we're probably okay.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
something I noticed too, and I'm sure you guys already have, but with each different location that you press on here, if they have a Google rating, it shows up as well. So it could also entice businesses to want to step up their game, because when people are coming through town, they're going to look at those Google ratings and choose where they want to visit based off of those. So it's kind of interesting. That's one of the first things that pops up when you click on an item.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It looks to me like the QR code.
Yes.
Okay, if you could include that on all of the mailer kind of stuff, that we send out, the little flyers, trifolds, and that kind of stuff that gets sent out, if you could get that printed on there, then people would be able to click on that and take a look.
Yes. I think it'll be useful, we hope.
Okay. We might also get that QR code for participating merchants and that type of thing, so that, put it on the door or the window or out in front of the store someplace, city park, and then people could click on that and then they could see what's going on around them. Is there any way to link this to calendar? In other words, what's happening today in Riverton?
Your Honor, I don't know. The short answer is I just don't know.
Okay.
I would think that there is a way to link it to a Google Calendar. Google does a really good job of those things, but we haven't tried that yet. That'll be new.
Okay. Well, one thing at a time, one step at a time. Okay, any other comments or concerns about this? Okay. All right. Let's talk about item number 2. So, is that Tony again?
Yes.
It is. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the Solutions Committee has been working on a number of things lately. The item that you have before you today is a discussion regarding modifications to what was 5.04040 of the Riverton Municipal Code that was previously titled Habitual Drunkard. The Solutions Committee was developed with the idea of developing methods to address substance abuse and public intoxication within our community. As such, this was one of the items that they've been talking about at length. It is important to denote first that 5.04040 already exists, and what you have before you is a further definition of developed for that particular section. It defines and provides standards associated with the designation. It sets up maintenance of a list, provides for appeal process, procedures, develops procedures for removal from the list via petition of an individual, removal from the list by the department, which is effective on certain dates that are built in for review, which are January 1st and July 1st, and it covers the method and distribution of said list. You have the document before you, so I won't go over it at length. However, I did want to point out that the committee has spoke with many of the liquor dealers. Some of them are here today, and we did receive some comments. Some of those comments include include some concerns about the present verbiage. Some of those concerns include the role of the license holder in the process, specifically with regard to what is deemed enforcement or their responsibilities associated with the work. Concerns about repercussions on businesses if not enforced correctly, and concerns about training of their staff due to turnover. Those are important as we have these discussions, so council knows some of the larger things that we have heard. We have heard a great number of things recently, but those things seem to keep coming up and have come up for a little while. A couple comments on the language that is provided for you, both for council and the public as a whole. This is the first time that council has formally reviewed this document. Items such as this are put into ordinance form, which is why you see the format that you have in front of you. And we do that so the proposed language can be specific and we know exactly what it is we're talking about. This is important to denote because some of the questions that have come up is why is this in ordinance form if it's not being considered right now? Well, because we put it in that format so we know exactly what we're talking about and what it would look like. That is pretty consistent for the things that we do. Items presented to council, the item is presented to council to receive feedback and direction for the Solutions Committee that is meeting this Thursday. As such, we request that if you have any changes that you would suggest to be specific so we can consider those. The conversation tonight as part of a work session is an additional step in the discussion. The reason for that is this is something a little different, a little new, and as such, it requires a little bit more discussion. It's been worked around within the Solutions Committee for a little while as a discussion point, and as such, we wanted to bring it forward so council could see some of the efforts, but also provide us information. If this is something that isn't desirable to move forward on, then the Solutions Committee can move to other items. If there are adjustments that need to be made, then we can have those changes made and the committee can discuss it. It is our intent to have these discussions a little more often, if it is okay with council. It does provide a little bit more conversation, and we believe that's a positive thing as we make these modifications. For the public, one of the things that we've heard is, is this going to be considered? I know County 10 said, well, we'll see if it's adopted or something to that extent. So it's important to denote that obviously there is no ordinance number. There has been no formal advertising in the paper so it could be considered, nor is there a public hearing. This is simply meant to be a discussion and to provide staff with direction. Members of the committee are in attendance. Our chair and vice chair are both here. Members of this council are here that sit on the Solutions Committee. Myself and Chief Murphy both staff this committee, and as such are responsible for presenting these items. With that, without going through the proposed language in detail, we made sure that our city attorney who helped draft it is here in order to answer some of these questions if they come up. And with that, we would stand for any questions that you might have or any discussion you wish to have. Thank you.
Your Honor.
Counsel, go ahead.
I spoke with you about this a little bit. Chief, from my understanding, there are 2 other cities within the U.S. that have adopted a similar ordinance. Is that correct?
Your Honor, that is correct.
And so with that, have we reached out to those communities to see how it's going for them so far?
Your Honor, when I did the research on this, these are pretty new ordinances in those communities as well, so I have not reached out to them, but I can this week to find out how it is working in their communities. So basically, Your Honor, just so you know, my research, all I did was pull up the ordinances for habitual drunkard in those towns, just to kind of give me an idea of how they wrote it, and then I provided that draft to the city administrator.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Kyle?
I noticed that on the bottom it says the list shall provide name, address, date of birth, and any other information that will aid in the identification of the listed person, and a photograph of the listed person if one is available. Well, last time I remember, when somebody's arrested, there's always an available photo. So I would think that it would be wise to not
that there must be a photo with it. And last time I inquired, you have to have ID to buy this product anyway. So, and then when it's distributed every January or every July, that update, is that going to be current, or as current it can be, or what?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
as part of this, the July 1 and January 1 items have to do with our general review of the list. The list can be updated per this ordinance on an ongoing basis, so we don't have to wait for the 6-month period. On the onset, you might have a couple, it would probably grow, I would think, relatively slowly over a certain period of time. And once those individuals meet the standard set, then they could be put on the list on an ongoing basis. So monthly, likely, we would provide that new information along with those photographs.
Your Honor.
Go ahead,
I
Kyle.
would think that we already have a frequent flyer list. I mean, most of the individuals that are currently under this definition are known to our police already. I mean, they know them by first name. So I wouldn't think that they would have to go through an accumulation period, a point period, or anything else. There would be a list you would start off with right off the bat. The records we would have previous records of arrests and court records, et cetera. I mean, we've got a list probably publishable by the end of the week with all this information, if this were put into ordinance.
Your Honor, and I would defer to our attorney on this one. I believe the question is whether or not that the adoption of the ordinance starts a new clock, or if the 5 incidents that happened a week and a half over the last week or last month count towards that number.
Go ahead, Rick.
It's basically the design as you're envisioning, that if you've had, once this is adopted, if you've had 6 convictions within the specified time, that you would be put on the list. You're probably right that you could identify most of them now, but I think it's important for, in this case, the chief, to go back and do a thorough review to make sure, more than likely, that we're not including somebody who shouldn't be on there. And so you're right, there's probably maybe 10 people you could identify right off the bat, but I think it has to be verified. And
Go ahead.
I was listening on television to a guy, Rudy Giuliano, and they asked him why he didn't prosecute an individual. He said, "Don't worry, he'll be back." And so this habitual, if we don't put them on today, they'll be on it tomorrow.
well,
So I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, is there's not a rush to go to a backlog. It will help itself by just being there.
and I think you're right. I guess what I was advocating for was, because it's a new ordinance,
Well, we start clean.
well, we not only start clean, but we're meticulous as to who we're putting on that list
Oh, yeah.
to ensure that they meet all the prerequisites.
So,
Your Honor.
go ahead, Sean.
Hey, so first, I really want to commend the group that got together and stepped forth. I received a lot of phone calls and emails since this was released out on County 10. The first thing everybody's saying is they're glad that we were doing this, and the other one is, how are we going to do it? And I kind of have the same concerns. I think it's something that we definitely need to look at. So I think it is great that we have intelligent people in the community that are trying to come together and figure out a way to make this work. My concern is how do we enforce it? As a previous manager at a store there, I know that I would have people come in and get busted for shoplifting. They would be inebriated or high or something like that, and I would say I want them trespassed, and 2 days later they would walk into my store because it just didn't do anything. So I guess my question is, and I don't know if it has to be answered right now, but I think that's something that we owe, is how do we enforce this, and how do we maintain this list? My other concern is the bull-legged C underneath 9.08.120, where it says bull-leg C definition. A known habitual intoxicated person is a person who within the past 180 days has been convicted of 6 or more criminal offenses through the Riverton Municipal Court. So what we're saying is once a month they can come in and have a bender and do whatever they want to, get arrested, and they just keep going as long as they do it once a month, all year. So I don't know about the 6. I did talk to Tony about it. He said it was just something that was thrown out there. So it was just something that I think that as we go back in front of the group, we take a look at that. Because, yeah, there's some that'll hit those 6 in the first 2 weeks. But, you know, are those the ones that we're trying to catch, or are we trying to catch the ones that, you know, come in and just do it upright once a month, or what are we after? So I guess those are my questions. I'll listen for any answers that anybody has.
Thanks, Sean.
Your Honor, may I address that?
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
So our intention, our desire is not to catch anyone. It is simply to disrupt the supply line to the public intox problem that we have here in Riverton. So when we looked at this, the vision is to merely stop the public intox problem that we face and to help stop the supply line of alcohol to these habitual drunkards.
May I add?
Go ahead, Tony.
Your Honor. I did talk to Councilman Peterson about this. He did inquire about it, and it did give us some time to have a little bit of thought surrounding it. In addition to what the chief said about interrupting a supply line to a problem, one of the reasons why 6 came up, we understand, because council looked at it as a council goal, that we have a challenge in front of us. The fact is, the fear is, if we put it down at 3 or 4, the list becomes a little unwieldy. This has been something that was brought up from the point of the Solutions Committee. It's been brought up by some of the liquor holders. How are they going to, if you put 40 people on a list, is that going to create too much of a challenge for them to do that enforcement? So I believe that the 6, while semi-arbitrary, actually puts us in an area where it keeps it under about 20. I did the math for last year and for 17, and there would have been 19 total that would have met at some point that standard. Whether or not, we did not do the math on who would have come off, but we didn't drop it below the 6. We believe that is a slightly manageable list and addresses some of the more severe cases that we're attempting to address first. But we're happy to discuss the modification of that number.
So it seems, just trying to visualize that, it looks to me like 4 across and 5 down. You could get 20 pictures on one sheet of paper.
Possibly.
Okay, so you'd have at a glance, you'd be able to look at that one sheet of paper and see the faces, and then behind that, you might have a sheet or half a sheet on each of those individuals for additional identification. Here's a question that I have. Okay, it looks to me like one of the things that we're trying to target here is a straw purchaser. And so somebody who goes in and buys and then furnishes that alcohol to one of these individuals. And so he's covered in here, right? So if you furnish alcohol to one of these people, but he's not, how do you notify him? How do you get the straw purchaser to know who's on the list?
Your Honor, and our attorney can discuss it a little more. Some of the discussion has had more to do with, it's not the first time that comes up. It's usually the second time that it becomes an issue. When somebody is purchasing for another person they don't know, we have a burden of proof. And Rick can talk to that a little bit, but that burden of proof probably can't be met on the first time, but it can be met on the second and the third and the like. So that's how that would generally be addressed. Do you want to add anything?
I see. So you could, if the first, because there's no penalty on the first offense, then what you would say is, okay, so this is your warning or your first offense on this, and now you know, here's what the law says, and now you know what, so if you do that again and you're apprehended doing that, then you'll be fined.
And I think in essence, there's kind of a double penalization there. One is the person who is being the straw purchaser. And I would agree that their knowledge of being on the list, of this person being on the list, is probably limited on the first offense. The second one is also on the liquor license holder. If they see, the city has a high burden. We've got to prove that they knew the person who was purchasing the alcohol was purchasing it for somebody on the list. The obvious situation is you have 6 people on the list, and they're talking to everybody who walks in the liquor store, will you go buy for me, will you go buy for me? If we can show the clerk saw that, and these people were on the list, they knew they were on the list, then potentially it's a violation against the liquor dealer. If the person just walks in, they don't see any contact with anybody, I don't think the city would ever be able to prove that. So I think it's aimed at both the straw purchaser and, I guess, obvious situations that are observed by a clerk of the store that puts them on notice this person may be buying for somebody else.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I add
Go ahead.
something? One of the conversations that has come up through our conversations with the liquor dealer that kind of bears repeating, and I know members of this council that sit on the Solutions Committee have heard it, but the intent when we have to start out, just as Councilman Larson denoted how it starts out and how you're going to get the list. Part of that whole conversation is working with our liquor dealers. It's not meant to be right out the gate laying a hammer down. We have to work with our liquor dealers to help develop a partnership and help try to implement this in the right way. And so if one or another doesn't follow along with it, then that's where the penalty conversation comes in. A lot of this has to do with developing that conversation back and forth so they feel comfortable if they see those straw purchasers picking up a phone and calling saying, I have a problem here, would you please help me? And then we need to show up and we need to help like we're supposed to. That's part of it. A lot of this ordinance has been couched in a very negative light. And I understand that it creates challenges for some of our liquor license holders. But there is a part of this that says we want to try to work together. And that might seem a little odd from just reading the black and white of it, but the intent is thus.
Kyle?
These are legally licensed businesses, correct?
Yes, sir.
They have a right to operate, and this, I don't see, would deny that. All I see is what we're trying to do is ensure that that product that they're selling is properly used.
Yes.
And, if you were listening to those ladies last week, and we have not heard that once, we have not heard it twice, we've heard it many times. The problem is minimizing. We're not interested in eliminating the sale of alcohol of any sort
in the city of Riverton. This is not a dry city. What we're trying to do is minimize conflict with other people. Obviously, if you were buying that and going home and falling down drunk in your own house, who would know? It's like who cuts a tree down? If there's nobody there, did they hear it? And so that's our point, is something like this will only benefit the community. It won't harm the community.
May I?
Councilwoman Schatz has been trying to talk to. I just wanted to bring that up.
Have you been waving your hand?
Not strong enough, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was
I'll get out of the way.
I was actually going to follow up with what you had asked. I thought so you were asking. I do see the wording here is, let's see. It is unlawful for any establishment or individual to become a nuisance by selling, giving away, or otherwise furnishing alcoholic beverages. But in the distribution of the list, I see that it was only given to a holder of a liquor license of any category. So that's what I'm trying to understand, is if we're going to be holding the person, any person accountable, how are we going to make sure that every person is made aware of this without distributing it publicly?
Your Honor?
Go ahead.
I believe this can be distributed publicly. That list can be furnished. It's being furnished to public individuals. Yes, they're liquor license holders, but there's no reason to expect that list to be restricted. So it would be. However, from a pragmatic standpoint, if person A doesn't know and is asked to buy alcohol, and somebody said, I don't have their ID, I don't really need to get into why, but they said, oh, okay. And they go in and they buy it, and then they're confronted by, the store owner calls, hey, I think this is a straw purchase, can you check it out? And the police department shows up. The burden of proof is is it reasonable that they were able to know that? Okay, and that's part of our burden of proof. So yes, we can make the list very public. However, there are those situations that Rick has to deal with from a prosecution standpoint that would limit his ability for those first-time people, and that's inherent to this. There are shortcomings within this ordinance. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect world. We're trying, so we do understand that those shortcomings exist, and we have to work through them over time.
I think the point more so is, when we're talking about maintenance of the list, that's the only place we're saying on the ordinance it's going to be disseminated. So I think if we were talking about a way that this would be publicly accessible, I think you'd want to have that specifically noted in the ordinance too.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I might, and I think the situation that Tony just described, where there may be a straw purchaser, and the clerk goes, I think this is an issue, and calls the police department. When the police department shows up, probably before the purchase, and notifies this individual that these people are on the list, it's going to prevent the sale, which is really what the ultimate goal of this is. The other thing I was going to say with regards to Councilman Larson is you were talking about the reason for this, and that it's not to make the city a dry city. And I think that the actual reason is set out in 9.08.120B. And that's what the purpose is to keep the person who has severe alcoholic issues and becomes a danger to himself and others and a nuisance, to prevent those people from purchasing alcohol, not the general public. But I think that's a pretty accurate statement of what the purpose of this is.
Well, it's the safety of the community.
And the individual.
And the individual.
Who consumes too much.
Tim?
Your Honor.
Just a second, Sean.
Yes, sir.
I've been reading the comments on County 10, which is probably a dangerous pastime, and one that I usually avoid. It's not a pleasant experience, to be sure. But I will say that there is one common thread through a lot of the comments is about enforcement. What can you tell me about enforcement of the ordinance, Chief?
Your Honor, so here is my vision of how this goes. There's going to be an education and training piece. So let's say the new list comes out October 1st. My staff will go with the list, take it to the liquor establishments, and have a, say, 2 to 3 month training and education piece. Here are the people on the list, here's the expectations, here's what the ordinance says, and work with them like Tony said. After that point where we all feel like everybody has a good understanding of the ordinance, of the people who are on the list, at that point then we would move forward, and I did tell the liquor holders, at no point do I envision our officers waiting in the parking lot or in the bushes, waiting for this to happen, and then we go in and nab somebody. Like, it just isn't designed that way. So the enforcement piece will be, just like it says, the first time, we'll go and we'll give warnings. The second time, they'll receive a citation. The third time, it will come before you.
That's removed.
Oh, it's been removed?
That's removed.
Okay.
One of the conversation, and I apologize, we did modifications to it. That was one of the items that came up from our discussions with the liquor dealers, that immediate, okay, must be this, and then it just, that leaves some discretion. So it's listed as a violation at this point, but as a standard violation, and does give the police department the ability to do that educational piece a little bit more. So we did remove the required first step, second step, third step actions and left that at discretion. We can put those back in, but it was my understanding when we were doing this that wasn't terribly desirable. I know there are people here that commented on that. So we did remove that and just made it a general violation. We also, the original document also slightly mirrored contributing and had at one point had the potential of a jail sentence, and that was removed as well. So the maximum that can happen here is the monetary fine part.
This no longer then has the possible penalty specifically listed here of losing a liquor license then either.
Your Honor, at this point, it's not in here. That would end up being part of the modifications to liquor code and would be listed under a violation of liquor code. So yes, if contributing is its own ticket, then it would mirror that.
And I guess the other thing is there'd been some discussion also of getting that to be more transparent as to what might occur in terms of steps that could be taken for a liquor license to be revoked as well. I think that's a discussion. Because when we started talking about the possibility of the loss of liquor license, it was very upsetting, understandably, to people who rely on that for their livelihood. And I think they were wanting a little bit more understanding and transparency as to how that could happen, what kind of steps would be possible there. And I think you're saying then those would be put more so into the code regarding liquor licensees then.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. That we are having a conversation right now, separate of this. Those concerns about a more standard structure with regard to liquor licenses and that process is ongoing. And if Kristen was here, and she's at WAMCAT right now, but that is something she's been working on as our clerk. And so that's something we'll be, again, discussing first in order to get some more clarity. Rick, did you want to add?
Go ahead, Rick.
I think the state law right now reads that a license can be suspended, put on probation, or revoked if there's a violation of the liquor laws. And so that's what this would do. The initial thought in putting in the warning and then the citation and then having it reviewed as part of a liquor license had twofold aspects to it. One was to ensure that the liquor dealers had adequate due process to challenge anything not only in court if there was a citation, but also how it would affect their liquor license. The second thing was that it was to maybe follow through with what the chief said, to make this more gradual, rather than, okay, we've done our 3 months education, now we're going to cite you if you violate it. You know, one of the areas of the law that unfortunately periodically liquor licensees violate is selling to minors. That's a violation. They're supposed to check IDs. For whatever reason, they may not do so. And liquor license holders do get prosecuted for those. It can affect their liquor license, but I think the way that generally that most councils handle that is they want to ensure that it's not a problem that's developing with a particular licensee before they take the next step to revocation. Once you go to the revocation step, then you fall under the Administrative Procedures Act, and they're entitled to a full hearing on that. So I think there's various safeguards that are built into that, like they are with other laws.
So in other words, by taking this out, that is a possible penalty here. We're just reverting back to what would be the general possibility under the statute for revocation, rather than having it be something that would be a separate proceeding through this ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, and since that's already on the books, there really isn't any change.
That's true, because it is
Okay.
on the books.
All right. So Sean, are you still there, and do you still have a question?
I do still have a question. So,
Go ahead.
The first one is for Chief. I like your thought of gradually doing it in there, and I'm sitting here and I'm researching the tips training that they have to do. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can kind of tie this into I'm not sure how often they have to do tips training, but I wonder if there's a way that we could tie that into the new hire program that part of their liquor license states that all new employees will complete tips training and then come over and receive some kind of training from the city for a 2 or 4 hour block, given once a month. So that way we can continue to progress it in there. So just something for you guys to think about. And then have we ever thought about, I'm sitting here thinking about how we can try to help the people enforce it. Is there a way that when they hit their certain point that they either get a new ID and it's portrait instead of landscape? I saw that on County 10. Or even take a hole punch and punch a hole in their ID card, and instead of just saying if you look under 30 you have to show an ID card, everybody has to show an ID card, and it's now a law. And if you have a hole punched in the left-hand corner, guess what? You're going to have to go get some water.
Your Honor?
Go ahead, Tony.
I believe, and I've heard that suggestion before, the same way that minors have a different looking ID. I think one of the challenges that we have to that immediately is that those are state-issued documents, so we would have to work through the state. However, we can look into...
Our DMV needs some more to do over there.
We can look into that on an ongoing basis. This isn't a silver bullet by any stretch of the imagination. So our work is going to continue, and that can be part of it, is to start inquiring on a state level what can, get some more heads at the table. So we can bring that up.
No, I don't want you to think at any point I think this is a bad idea. I think this is an awesome idea. I think it's just a step in the right direction. It's going to take some very tippy-toe steps to get to the point to where I think this is going to be successful. But I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited that we have good men and women in the community that are stepping up, and because I know they're catching some flack. I like Councilman Hancock. I kind of got sucked into it and started looking at it, and of course, everybody, again, we're living in glass houses on the golf course, and nobody has ever suffered anything. So thank you for the committee, if they're there. Thank you for what you're doing. And I think this is going to be interesting to see how it comes out.
Thank you, Nick. So you sort of had a question for the chief, and I don't think he's had a chance to respond to that.
Your Honor, so
Go ahead.
I will tell you that the liquor establishments that we work with on an ongoing basis, we do not have to, make it mandatory for them to have tips training. All of the establishments do that on their own. And so I'm very excited to let you know that we do have very responsible liquor license holders that do that on their own for their employees. I do think it is a good idea, though, to add this into the training, and I am more than happy to get with them and do that education piece with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Anybody else got any questions or thoughts or?
Yeah, I'm curious if there's any audience members.
Yeah, okay, so, all right, so we've kind of chewed on this a little bit and thought about it. Have you, anybody here in the audience, have anything that they'd like to add to what we've talked about or ask questions that haven't been answered? Go ahead.
Okay, so it was stated that there was like 17 to 19.
Wait, tell me your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Diane Markworth. I own the Landing Lounge.
Okay,
So it was stated there's like 17 to 19 problem people, and what is our population in the city? So why not harsher penalties on them for their recurring offenses instead of making us the police force to prevent this?
okay, so what are we looking at? So what are we looking at there? What can we do with a habitually intoxicated individual?
Your Honor?
Go ahead.
What we can do right now, I will leave to the chief and our attorney. I will tell you that one of the things that part of this whole process is having conversations with our legislators, our judges, to try to do exactly what you're saying. The biggest part of our conversation as we move along and look at a very complex problem that many different people have tried to address is that we understand that it is not one thing. It is not just going to be enforcement. The chief can speak to the fact that we've tried to arrest our way out of it. It doesn't work. We've tried treatment. Sometimes it works, more often than not as much. There has to be a willingness to change. We've heard that. And some of it is there's only so much that the local court can do in terms of its authority to impose fines and penalties. So the conversation is ongoing to try to find ways in terms of penalties. That is part of the conversation that's happening right now. At this point, I can tell you that we're trying to have that conversation. Unfortunately, if you were talking about turning this into a type of felony at certain points, so over 6, now we can start doing it as it can be written as a felony. I think they do that with DUIs.
4 for DUI.
4 for DUIs. If you mimicked that process, that's still a legislative change for our legislature. So it does take us a little bit of time. That has to be drafted. It has to be sponsored. But we are working in that direction to have those conversations. And it is a good idea. It is part of it.
And I just had like one other thing. Alcohol is so much easier to obtain than drugs. There's still a huge drug problem. They're just going to get it other ways. It's just going to happen. I personally don't sell hardly any package at all, so it's not really going to be a big issue for me, but I can see where you're laying the responsibility out somewhere else. And what about Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, mouthwash? Are you going to penalize those people for selling mouthwash?
So kind of like what Tony said, this is just one piece of the huge puzzle. So we will address those things, but this is so yes, those are on the table as well for the Solutions Committee, but we're just trying to tackle one little piece at a time, and this is the first piece in the puzzle that we're trying to move forward, so then we can address those other things.
Okay, it just seems like it's thrown on us. And
Sure.
said, for those retail sellers, I just feel bad for what they have to go through now.
So just so you know, and we've kind of had this talk with the rest of the liquor license holders, this is just one little piece of a much bigger puzzle. And so do we think this is, because on County 10, I read it as well, is this going to work? Is this the answer? We don't think that this is the one answer. We think that this is one of many answers that when you put together, hopefully is a move in the right direction.
So we'll be notified as the other pieces come up so we can see the whole.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I have to say, but
Okay, so I guess right now, well, or maybe you're going to talk about this.
I was just going to say this one thing. We only have authority to have ordinances that can have a penalty up to 6 months in jail. That's it. So in terms of what we can do as a city council, I can't sit there and create a felony. So in terms of that question, can we sit there and have harsher penalties or whatever? As it stands right now, public intoxication is punished the highest that we can under our authority. It's just 6 months in jail, $750 fine or both. So that's what we've done. So when you're thinking about anything else that could be done over that, we don't have the authority to do that. That's something you'd have to go to the legislature, just like Mr. Tolstead was saying. So,
bring it up. Perfect.
Yeah, the other thing, the council recently did increase the penalty by adding jail time to this ordinance, where previously it was just a fine. And some of that has been exercised. It's a very complex problem, and I think, like the chief said, this isn't meant to be a cure-all.
Yeah, I think just as the liquor license holder, the rest of us would like to see more of the puzzle instead of just feeling like we're being targeted. That's
And I
what it
think
feels like, as we're being targeted.
this was kind of a place to start, was attempting to cut off the supply. And like you say, it's just like illegal drugs.
You're going to get it.
They still get it, but if we can make it harder for them to get it, that's one piece.
Okay, as long as we just get to know the rest of it, it would be helpful. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for coming in. One of the challenges that we do face with incarceration is that because they're arrested under, there's no state statute for public intoxication. So when we arrest somebody for public intox, that's a city ordinance. So we put them in county jail. The county charges us $75 a day to hold that person in jail. Okay, so we are right now well on our way to a jail bill for this fiscal year of $150,000. Okay, so what happens to us, okay, and so what happens to the guy that's in jail? Okay, when the guy, he maybe sobers up a little bit, and he gets out, and what do we, within 24 hours, we've got him again?
Your Honor, that's correct.
Okay, so Tony gave me some number the other day that out of the 19 people, one of those guys was 41. Okay, so one guy had 41 arrests, okay, in a 6-month period of time.
Your Honor.
Okay, so what we're asking, I think what we're asking is for liquor dealers to help us on this, okay, and not sell to these guys and not sell to the people who provide liquor to them. If you can figure out who that is, okay, try to stem that, okay, a little bit, and because there's an ordinance for you to follow that should give you some protection from the standpoint of somebody saying, well, I'm entitled to buy this. Okay? So then that gives you some protection to say, no, you're one of these guys on the list, I'm not going to sell to you. Okay? And so that's what we're kind of trying to ask. I don't know, maybe it's, I'm hopeful that maybe it'll help. Okay?
Your Honor, may I?
Anybody else?
Your Honor, we wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Christine Grover, and I am the chair of the Solutions Committee.
I'm Michelle Woodmere, and I'm the co-chair.
Okay.
I run the homeless shelter here in Riverton.
And I run Eagles Hope Transitional Housing.
And we kind of want to talk about how this would benefit our program and kind of what we see on a daily basis with the alcohol problem that we run into with our clients. For me, at the homeless shelter, we're getting them right out of jail. We're getting them out of prison, out of treatment with nowhere to go. Or the people that have decided that they want to get out of their environment that is keeping them in drugs and alcohol. And so having something like this put into place for the people that come to my facility would be very beneficial. We've been working with the court and with Judge McKee, who has been sentencing some individuals that have their public intox to stay at the shelter so that they're not having to go to the VOA. They're not having to go to the jail and take up more time and more resources, and trying to see if we can help have them a safe place to be while we're waiting for treatment, while we're waiting for whatever is coming from the court system itself. And so having something to hold them more accountable, and it's more about that individual, and we're looking at what that individual needs. And that individual does not need alcohol. They need that support that our services can offer, but we can't offer them when they're drunk. They have to be sober to stay in our facility. They can't come there to use the phone. They can't come there to get a coat. They can't come there to have a safe bed for the night without being sober. And so until they're sober, our hands are tied.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate your service on the committee and your service to the community.
Thank you.
Hey, Your Honor.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Hey, do they have a list of everybody that's on that committee? I don't know if we can put that out over this, but I know there's been a lot of questions about who's on that committee, where they're from, and what they do, because I know as I got sucked into the County 10 spiel, that was one of the things. I don't know if they want to put that out, if they have that out. If they do, it might be good just for people to know, so that way they can see that we've got two great people right there that deal with this on a daily basis. So it's not just somebody who's coming in saying, I want my park to be better. It's people that really care about what happens to the individuals.
Oh, yes. Do you have that list?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you read it? Do you have it right in front of you?
Your Honor, I do not have it right in front of me.
Okay.
I can go off memory relatively well.
Okay.
Chief Murphy and I staff that committee. Councilman Godey has the list in front of him. He's pointing at it, so I'm going to let
Councilman Godey has the list.
I do have the.
Why don't you read the list, Councilman Godey?
I will do so. Myself and Councilwoman Schatza are current members. Tristine Grover and Michelle Widmer, who were just at the podium. We have Leslie Shakespeare, Jenny Wildcat, John Vincent, and recently we added Jacob Tyra and Justin Long.
Your Honor, can you say what they position they hold in the community? I think that's what they were interested in hearing, was who they are.
Sure. So Jacob Tyra and Justin Long are represent liquor license holders. Jenny Wildcat is a Northern Arapaho representative. Leslie Shakespeare is an Eastern Shoshone representative. John Vincent is past mayor and just an interested community member, wanted to be an active member. And then, of course, Tristine and Michelle have already mentioned they represent Eagle's Nest and the homeless shelter. I was trying to get the right name. So I think that is everybody currently.
Thank you.
But we're always, the other thing too is are certainly open to members that have an interest in the solutions that we're attempting to find. Even Mr. Tyra and Mr. Long were recent additions based on the interest as liquor license holders. They wanted to be an active part, and we welcome them and have enjoyed their input. I mean, a lot of the changes that have come from tonight's ordinance came as a result of their input.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Something else I wanted to say about that. This is the first time that this has been presented to the council as well. Tonight was the first night. So I just want to make it clear to everybody that wasn't just thrown at anybody. This is the first time that many of the council members have seen this ordinance as well. And it's, and we do make that meeting, the Solutions Committee meeting, open to the public as well. So you're more than welcome to attend that as well.
Okay. Looks like we're done talking about it. You got anything else, Sean?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you to everybody's participation tonight.
Okay, all right. So do you have any, so you're going to do a little more work on this, or do you think we're going to see it next week or in a couple of weeks? Or?
Your Honor, what I have heard tonight, the only modification that I've denoted is public posting, that it can be posted publicly and provided that was part of that notification part.
Okay.
We would attempt to modify that verbiage. If council is comfortable with the document as it currently sits, we would bring it back to the committee, have that discussion, and bring it to you probably at this next meeting or the meeting after at latest.
Okay. A little question that just came floating by is that how many full retail liquor license dealers do we have right now? Have you got a guess? 20?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly.
Okay, but there's.
Gives that number right.
Kristen can pull it right out.
I know. Okay, but maybe we have 2 or 3 times as many restaurant liquor licenses. Are we contemplating taking this to the restaurant liquor license people too?
Your Honor, we do. When we made contacts with license holders, different license holders.
Okay, so anybody that's got a liquor license would be included in that malt beverage,
Yes,
beverage
that would
license?
count that way.
Okay, all right. And so then that'd also put a little burden on us, maybe if we were doing the fair or something like that, and had anybody that was going to go for an open container permit or a party permit or something like that, they'd wind up getting one of these lists. Okay. Go ahead, Kyle.
But all of that said, I don't think that these frequent flyers that we're talking about are utilizing cafes or other alternate places of obtaining liquor. I think they are just buying it by the bottle.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I'm not trying to say, okay, well, this individual or that group of people. I'm just trying to say that the burden that we perceive might be less on most and heavier on some. And that's just the nature of the beast. Package is going to be worse than somebody else because these frequent flyers are not getting intoxicated having a hamburger somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And, okay, okay. Any other questions? Discussion over? Okay. Thank you guys for bringing that to us. Thank you for coming and showing your interest in it one way or the other. Okay, and expressing your concerns. We really want to make this so that it's a functional thing. I don't think there's any point in just wasting paper and ink if it isn't going to, provide us with some tools to try to address the issue. So we're looking for input. Okay, and the process on this then is that this is a change to the city ordinance. And so it looks like there's two ordinance changes. Okay, and did I read it right? Is that we're changing it where it says habitual drunkard, we're changing that to intoxicated person?
Habitually intoxicated.
Habitually intoxicated person, okay. All right, and so there's going to be two resolutions that will come before city council, or one?
Your Honor, I believe it would be one.
All done in one
It
action?
allows us to, our ordinances allow us to address the one issue within a single ordinance, kind of like the city engineers.
Okay, all right. So then it'd go for 3 readings. So there'd be, the first reading would really get introduced to the council in some form that we wanted to look at, and we'd have a public hearing on that, and then we would discuss it as a council. We'd take comment from the audience, that type of thing, and then we'd pass it on first reading, pass it on second reading, pass it on third reading, and each of those readings are an opportunity to amend it or to change it or to kill it. And so there's a process that we would go through as we work through this. So this isn't something that's just going to materialize tomorrow. We'd be lucky if we get this actually on the books as effective ordinance by the middle October, or yeah, maybe the 1st November. Okay, if we really pushed on it. So, okay, all right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good evening. 8:20 p.m.